Saturn entering Aries. I'm so excited. I will be throwing the dates and times in the chats, and I'll copy that now as I start to give a little bit of an overview. But Saturn has been in the sign of Pisces, the 12th sign of the zodiac, since March 7th, 2023. And for people like myself who in their natal chart have Saturn in Pisces, that means that I have been going through, amongst others, what's called a Saturn return. And these are notorious periods of time that are several years long that happen approximately every 28 to 30 years on a cycle. And they're huge turning points and growth periods. So I am very excited for Saturn to exit Pisces, even though it'll only be for like 5 months, and then it's going to come back in, and then it'll be gone. Then it'll be gone for another 28 to 30 years. I'm very excited for both of those dates, but I'm going to get a reprieve, which will be nice to see, okay, well, what's it like when I don't have that Saturn pressure trying to try and do trim and make a bunch of changes in my life. What will it be like when it's settled a little bit more? That will be nice. I can't wait. And for anyone who has Saturn, if you look at your chart, it kind of looks like an N with a little horizontal line in the vertical part. If you have Saturn in Aries in your natal chart, it means your turn, passing you the baton. You're next with having Saturn completely reevaluate your entire life and what's working, what's not working, and getting rid of all that jazz. So this is really going to be one of the biggest talks of conversation that you'll probably hear about, and now it's of the year and it's happening this week. So the exact dates is Saturday, as I mentioned, based on Eastern time. So it's barely Saturday. It enters Aries at 11:35 p.m. Eastern time. So depending on where you live, it'll be in the evening on Saturday or it'll be well into Sunday. So again, for me, I'll have my video go up for this on Friday, so it'll be an advance notice for everyone. And I mentioned this a little bit before, but Saturn only being in Aries for a few months, and that's because Saturn has its regularly scheduled retrograde that's coming up later this year. So it's going to be moving through the sign, so as if this is the slice in the pie chart. So it finally enters Aries. It goes X amount of degrees in, honestly, barely. And then it retrogrades, and then it starts backing up, goes into Pisces again. Jeez. I have the balloons and how appropriate. It goes back into Pisces again, stations direct. Oh my gosh. And then it will retrace those same degrees, enter Aries, and then it's just going to keep going. So then the next time it retrogrades, it'll be sitting in Aries. So it'll just be moving back and forth between those degrees of Aries. And then eventually, a few years out, it'll start moving into Taurus. And so not every time a planet retrogrades does it happen over that degree point. We had that happen with Pluto. I think we're also having it happen with all of the other outer planets, in part because they move slowly. So those are all going to be retrograding in the fall as well, backing up into the signs that they've been in. And then next year they'll lock in for, in their case, like, over a decade. Saturn is just a few years, but for the outer planets, it's over a decade or multiple decades. Saturn represents responsibility, so taking things really seriously. It's leveling up in maturity. Constriction, so that's what I meant about like cutting things out. So what's considered waste, what's not useful, what's not helping you, what's not supporting you, what's holding you back, getting rid of that stuff. And life lessons, kind of as a result. So it's known for tough love, wisdom, and also Saturn represents karma in the grand scheme. When Saturn moves into Aries, Aries represents independence, drive, passion, competition, and, conflict, battles, injury, all that jazz. So we might be dialing back a little bit of Aries innate impulsivity and thinking a little bit more about the long-term goals, because that's what Saturn loves. So we have this brief stint where it's pretty much the end of spring, most of summer, that Saturn is going to be in Aries. And then it dips back in and it doesn't re-enter Aries until February of next year. The retrograde into Pisces will happen on the September 1st. It'll re-enter Aries just before Valentine's Day, on Valentine's Day 2026, and then remain in Aries until April of 2028. So as you can see, it'll be a couple years locked in to Aries. Do we look at what's in Aries, Pisces, natal chart where Saturn is, or both? Yes. So thank you for the great transition, Carrie. I was just about to advise everyone to look at, for this summer period that we're talking about, because this is just the preview, and then we're going to go back to Pisces. So if we're just focusing on Saturn and Aries, what you want to look for in your chart is 0 degrees through, and this is very specific, I'll put it in the chat, 1 degree and 56 minutes. So it almost makes it 2 degrees, and it's just a hair shy. So if you want to do an approximation, you're basically looking at the first 2 degrees of Aries. And when Saturn is changing signs, it's saying, okay, you're going to be taking that slice of Aries, those couple degrees right at the beginning, and eventually the whole, the whole thing later, starting next year, more seriously, leveling up, having some lessons, tough love, dialing back on some of the impulses. So you can also let me know in the chat which house number you have in there, and we can talk about those. Second house for me, no planets. Thanks, Carrie. You know how this works. So in the second house, what this means is Saturn is going to be saying, one, how are my monies? Like what I'm earning. Am I earning money? Am I spending money properly on myself, for myself? What are my assets? Do I want to now invest in something? Do I want to get rid of something? My self-worth. Am I taking my self-worth, self-care, self-love seriously? Am I valuing myself? Do I need to reevaluate my values and principles in life? What I think is important has value. And those are the many types of questions that you could be asking. So ultimately what you're looking for, starting this Saturday to Sunday, for the next few months, is if there's more energy in this space where it just kind of feels heavier because it's so much more serious, of like, okay, I'm like really taking a hard look at my finances, my values, and my self-worth. And then it'll back out and then you'll have 6 months off, but it'll give you a preview to see, okay, well, what does that feel like for me when my attention and my lessons, my life lessons in maturity are focused in this space where it's been right now in your first house, which is your identity and your physical appearance, sense of self. So really, really big topics. Stephanie, 11th house with Jupiter. So 11th house, by with Jupiter, do you mean that it's just co-present or are they close by degree? Like, is Jupiter in and around that 2 degree mark? So 11th house is networking, friends, community, social media, any way that you're in connection with other people. And if you do, in the event that you do have Jupiter within the 7 degrees, the first 7 degrees of Aries, then Jupiter is about expansion and Saturn's about contraction. Energetically, they are in opposition to each other. Like Jupiter is optimistic and wants to go out and explore, and Saturn is like, no, let's like do less and let's take things seriously. Sitting right at 0. Perfect. So what that will mean is they're going to be fighting with each other because they represent opposite energies. So what could happen is naturally you are someone who wants to expand socially, wants to connect, wants to network with other people in a fiery, passionate way. And when Saturn moves right over it, and it will retrograde and it will pass it again, and then it will pass it again as it goes direct, it's going to hit it 3 times. Then you can pay attention to those days. You can look those up. You can use that in the AstroSeek transit tool. You can identify those specific days and kind of be aware of them. But what it will trigger is kind of feeling a little bit uncomfortable and smaller, or maybe even like a downer, because it's kind of squashing some of that optimism. Like, no, 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 none of that. Like, we have to be serious. We have to do less. And Jupiter wants to do more. So it might just feel like a little bit uncomfortable for that period of time. But um, again, that's going to happen off and on between Saturday and February of next year. All three of those passes will happen in that period of time for you. Fifth house Aries, that's play, creativity, anything pleasure seeking, dating, children. So having passionate, creativity or exploration, etc. It's kind of like I was just saying with Jupiter. It's like maybe putting a little bit of damper on the fun. So you could be assessing, all right, have I been overdoing it with fun and play and creative expression? Or maybe I'm working on a craft, I'm developing a creative skill set, and now I'm going to finally take it seriously. I'm going to monetize it. I'm going to do something with it. So it doesn't always mean that it's taking things down a peg. It could be that you're just looking at it through a different lens and saying, okay, well, what could I do with this now that's more meaningful and supports me in the long term? April, are you saying that you have Saturn in Pisces in your fifth house in your birth chart? If so, then you have also been experiencing a Saturn return. So, hey, friend. So what that would mean, presumably, depending on which house system that you use, presumably Saturn would be going into your sixth house. So for the sixth house piece for Aries, then that would mean um, career, your job in the sense of what's your service, what is it that you're doing. So it doesn't mean like your career arc, but it's like what is giving you kind of like what's motivating you. Like how are you serving? How are you contributing? What are you doing in your day to day, your routines? So it has the energy of like a work-life balance in some ways as well. So it doesn't have to be limited to like, so if you retired and you were not working, it doesn't mean, oh, well, I'm not going to feel it. It can present in other ways, also included in the sixth house, pets as well in your Saturn return. Yeah, I'm with you. So hopefully you will enjoy this break as well, the next few months that we have a time off. Um, Retired corporate last year. Oh my gosh, that's a great example. Great example. I technically did the same thing. I didn't retire and I didn't, but I exited from corporate also during the Saturn return as well. Um, Other major hallmarks of it, just people for contacts, is like leaving a job, getting married, getting divorced, buying a house, selling a house, um, experiencing death, like mourning. So pets, family, ideas around yourself, depending on where it happens to fall on your chart. For me, it's in my ninth house. So that could be like my belief system or spirituality, like taking spirituality seriously. I started teaching and created my business all in this area during this time. So that's where knowing the house it's in is useful. See, how do I know if I am in a Saturn return? So what you want to do is you want to see where Saturn is. So as I mentioned, it kind of looks like an N with a bit of a longer vertical part that has a little horizontal line going through it. If you are looking at the table on the side, it might just tell you, or depending on the app you're using, it might just say your Saturn is in Gemini or something. And your Saturn return means that it's in the sky right now in that place. So you're not in your Saturn return, and you're not going to be in your Saturn return this year if your Saturn is not in Pisces, not in Aries. If it's anywhere else, you are on a break. You don't have a Saturn return. That being said, if it's in any of the cardinal signs, then Saturn is going to be squaring or in opposition to your return. So you still can catch some strays. You still feel a little bit of pressure. You can still have some life lessons. It's just not as intense as when it's the actual return. So meaning if you, in looking at your chart, have your Saturn in either Aries, Libra, Cancer, or Capricorn, you will feel varying degrees of intensity over the next few years. If you have had it in Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, then you could have been feeling it in different ways, different levels of intensity since March 2023. Sagittarius, exactly. So then you would have been feeling it in the sense of it being a square. So as it's been transiting, you could have still had some milestones that occurred, but it's not like what, April and I are talking about, where it's like total reevaluation of everything going on in your life and picking it apart. You could have just had some different moments, especially where it was aspecting that 5-degree mark, which would have been a while ago. It would have been much earlier on, versus now. We're well past that. But the point of it being exact was closer to the beginning, so probably 2023, and then maybe at some point in 2024, but most likely just contained within 2023. So that could have been maybe a notable year for you